everybody, and welcome back to another video in our web design series. Right now we're going through a bunch of different CSS code, and today we're going to talk about the CSS clear and the CSS float, and then also the overflow properties. So if you come into our code here, you can see I have an empty index HTML and then an empty styles.css. And then over here in my directory, I have 3 different pictures. All of them are just castles, but really you can use whatever picture you want. You can even use the same picture. It doesn't really matter. Let's go ahead and fill out our index HTML. So we're going to auto-generate some code. I'm going to link a CSS file, and that of course is style.css. Now inside of this body, I'm going to make a div, and we're just going to say div. We don't need a class on this right now. Inside of my div, I'm going to have a p class, and this is going to be p.p1, just for a class name p1. And then inside of my p, I'm going to have an image tag, and my source is just going to be castle1.png. Alt is going to be castle image. And then after this, we are going to have just some random text. So I can say lorem, maybe 100, and that's going to generate just a block of text for me. Now, I am actually going to give this image a class as well. So in here, we're going to say class is equal to I1, and I'm going to take this entire div and duplicate that 2 more times. Down here, I'm going to say P2, class is going to be I2, and my castle image is going to be castle2. And then same thing down here, class is going to be P3, castle image 3, and then my image class is going to be I3. So now, if I go ahead and save that and reload my web page over here, you can see that I get 3 images and then 3 just blocks of text after those images. So let's give this a little bit of styling. Come on over into the styles.css, and then inside of here, we are just going to style every div inside of this thing with a little margin around it. So we'll say margin, and then maybe just 8 pixels of margin. And after that, I'm going to give everything a border of 2 pixels and solid, how about blue? It doesn't really matter. But there you go. Now you can see everything here. We've got our images and then our text, and you can see this text actually starts right here after the image. And this really isn't a good look, because essentially it's taken this line with 1 word and really only 1 line high, and it's made it as tall as our entire image. So to fix that, what we can do is we can target our I1 image class, and inside here, we are simply gonna turn on the float property. So I could say float, and in here I've got a few different options. I can say left, and you can see it'll put my image on the left, and then the text can show up on the right. Or I could say right, and then the opposite of that happens. My image will show up on the right, and then the text will show up on the left. And you'll notice there that this picture needs just a little bit of padding because the text is right up against it. So to do that, we're going to add a margin on because we floated to the left, we want to add a margin to our right. So if I add a margin right and maybe make it 4 pixels, now we just have a little bit of space. Let me make that window a little bit bigger. We just have a little bit of space between the text and then the picture. So maybe even a little more would be good. So just to differentiate it a little bit more. So there you go, you can see that. And that seems to be working well. Now, what if inside our second one, let's go ahead and set the image on the second one. So we could say .I2, and inside the I2 image, let's say I want float right. And then after that, I'm going to say margin. Not max resolution. Margin is going to be equal to margin on the left side this time. Because we're floating to the right, our margin is going to show up on the left, and we'll just make that equal at 6 pixels. Well, now you can see this is looking exactly like the top one, at least exactly how we structured it so far. But now, if this image wasn't horizontal, let's say it was maybe a little more vertical, kind of like a portrait image instead of a landscape image. So if we change our width to maybe around 200 pixels, and then if we change our height to 800 pixels, and you can see I'm exaggerating here a little bit. Maybe, actually, let's not exaggerate that much. Maybe 500 pixels. So now, there we go. We have an image, and this image starts within our div, our second div, but then it overshoots it, and it shoots it onto the second one. And now you can see that the second one, or rather the third one. So if I come down here and say I3, and then within my third image, if I resize this and say maybe width of 400 pixels, whoops, too big, maybe 300 pixels. Well, now you can see my third one has started, and my text below it is not quite lined up. So if we line up our text on that one as well, we can say float, and I'll just stagger it. So we're going to say float right again, and then save that, or sorry, rather float left again. So now you can see we actually have that image floating to the left, and you have text wrapping around both images. So what's going on here? Basically, because this image has overshot its div and it's extending down into the next div, the content of this div, because I set my float to left, the text here is going to wrap this one. It's going to wrap this image on the left, and then it's going to wrap this image on the right. Well, we don't really want that because we don't want this image actually extruding out into this next div. So what I can do is I can come down here, and we're going to give this third div a class, and we're just going to say class name is equal to D3. Now let's save that, come back to styles, and then down here, if I say D3, and then inside my D3, I have a clear property. If I say clear, if I say clear left, it's going to clear any image coming down on the left, which in this case is none because our image is on the right. So if I delete that out and say clear on the right, now you can see the entire div has cleared that image that was coming down, so that basically all of this text is showing up how we want it to, and then this image is showing up wrapped with that text. However, this image is still overshooting my div here because you can see the blue border is the div boundary. To fix this issue, let's go on up into that dev, and if we just type overflow auto, and then save that, well, now you can see this, this border is wrapping all the way around the bottom of that picture. And as long as you are able to take control of your borders and your margins, this generally works, although in some cases you might end up seeing a scroll bar if you do that, which we don't always want. So this is actually a somewhat dated approach to fixing that problem. The better way to fix that is to use something called a pseudo-element, which we haven't learned about yet, but basically if you do div : after, and then down inside of here, if we put blank content, and then after that, we are going to do clear and clear both, just like we have the option for left or right, but here we want to do both because we want this always to work. And then finally, if you just display table after that, now if you save that, you can see that we still have the fix-in without this overflow auto. And just to show you, we could take that out, save it. You can see we have the problem again where the border does not go all the way down to the bottom of our image. Now we paste that back in, save it again, and you can see that that issue is fixed. So this is generally the preferred way of fixing that on modern websites because you'll avoid ending up with a scroll bar at certain times. So hopefully you've learned quite a bit from this lecture about how to float your images and your text and mix them together and wrap the text around them so that it looks good. If you're learning a lot from these videos, definitely leave a comment down below, and we will see you in the next video.